seat, we'll get started. So welcome to the Houston West Chamber of Commerce, PDN, Personal Network Development. Take yours, Bill. Got a lousy, noisy crowd here. Okay. This is sponsored by the Houston West Chamber of Commerce. Houston West Chamber of Commerce has got over 800 members, that's company members, and when you expand that to employees and staff and so on, you touch about 70,000 people when you're involved with that chamber. They have over 300 meetings like this one right here every single year. Well, it's almost like one a day. Isn't it? A lot of them are ribbon cutting and so on, but they haven't many meetings going on. This particular meeting, it is a committee, like all of the meetings are, and we focus on personal and business development. Now that's got a number of aspects. One of those is health, and you'll hear from Red O'Loughlin a little bit later on the health issue. We also cover the mental aspects, things like memory improvement on business aspects. That's marketing, that's sales, that's administration, it's operations, that's leadership, goal setting, all of those different aspects. And of course we do networking, and we encourage you to, after we finish the session today, to get a chance to meet with the individuals here and see if you have something in common to move forward with. This is just some of the speakers. This meeting is held once a month, and I've been hosting it for the past 9 years. So we've got a number of top speakers from all over the country. These are international speakers that come here. I spend most of my time networking, and so we'll cover just one element of networking this morning. This is an upcoming book that you'll want to read. When you meet someone and you shake hands, and give them your name, what's the first thing they say?
What do you do?
What do you do? So, there's a little bit of a problem with that, in that most people spend their time talking about themselves. They tell you how great their company is, and how great their products are, and how great they are. And then they see the person's looking over their shoulder to who's the next guy that they're going to meet with. So I'm going to encourage you to eliminate the use of I, me, mine, we, us, ours when you make an introduction. So let's try one. Do you know how? I just heard that. Do you know how? Curiosity. Do you know how most people? Now, Mary, are you part of most people?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So we've got curiosity, and now we've got inclusion for this. Do you know how most people have a difficulty introducing themselves? Well, some people know the magic words that keep the conversation going. What do you suppose they say next? Some people know the magic words to keep the conversation.
That's what I do. What do you do?
Yeah, what are those magic words, right? So, when you introduce yourself, create curiosity. You want to have the inclusion. You want to present a common problem. You want to find some collaborators in helping you solve that problem. there needs to be some emotion involved, and of course, you've got to have a solution for them. So here's an interesting thing. If I say to you something about the pink elephant, do you think E-L-E-P-H? No. You think about this animal. The mind thinks in terms of pictures. So if we're trying to remember how to give a good presentation, the words to use, we need to associate. So, number one, like a sharp pencil, except kind of bent over, so it looks almost like a question mark. Number two, two is like, let me see if I can draw this backwards, like a two like this, right? That's kind of like a duck swimming in the water. A three, hard to find pictures of these, but three tine forks. Four sides to a box. And five, emotion, that is stars, twinkling stars. And then six is like an elephant's trunk, okay? Let's see if we can relate that a little better here. First thing, see if you can find, there's some seats back here, one there, a couple over here, ma'am.
Thank you.
Number one is what?
Pencil.
Yeah, pencil, very good. Number two is what? The duck. Number three is what? Three times fork. Number four is a box. Number five, kind of like a Texas star or twinkling stars. And number six, the elephant's trunk. So, not confusing yet. Now we're going to put in the numbers and the introduction together. I said, do you know how? That's curiosity. That's a question. Remember the question mark and the number one associated. So, what is the second thing? I asked Mary if she was part of some people, right? So, here's this duck swimming in the water in the lake at the park, and most of the visitors are around there surrounding that lake watching that duck. So, do you know how most people? Next we have a difficulty. Now, what is the difficulty? Jerry Seinfeld said that a person would rather take a 3/4 ticket and die and be in that container than stand up in front of people and give the eulogy, right?
Yeah.
So, there's your picture, the box. We talked about many people. Now, this is a small box, so it's just some people. Not everybody can get in that box, so it's just some people. And then, the magic words. So, that's where the stars come in, and the emotion. And then finally, we have that elephant that's lifting up those logs, continuing the motion going, okay? So we put it all together, and we said, do you know how most people have a difficulty introducing themselves? Well, some people know the magic words to keep the conversation going. Now, Jeb, I know you like to know those magic words, but we're all here networking. We only got a few minutes. Would it be okay if we got together tomorrow, see how we could help build each other's business?
Certainly.
Guess what? You never, ever want to try to sell something when you're networking. All you want to do is build value and get the appointment. That's all we care about. Okay? So, this is some links, and by the way, this is being recorded. Can you see okay? There's a chair here for you. didn't know if I
I
was
have
getting.
my contacts on.
Oh, good. If I was getting in your way or not. Okay. But anyway, some links, and we're recording this so you can read this a little bit later. At this time, what I'd like to do is introduce our guest speaker. Many of you know Ted Heap, Constable Ted Heap, or something about him. But I want to tell you from my perspective, it's almost like comparing someone to George Washington. This is a large man, and he's powerful, and I know it personally because you see, when we were doing the Citizen Police Academy, I got down there on the mat with him, and this guy is strong. Now, he happens to lead the second largest constable's office in the whole United States. Over 400 deputies in there and 50 support personnel in there. And he's got the respect of every one of these people. He's a very humble individual, but when he speaks, action happens. He's also a very God-fearing individual. He's a deacon in his church, and he brings faith into his community. It's difficult for people in corporate positions sometimes, but he does do that. And then, most of all, he's involved with the community. One of his focuses when he took over Precinct 5 was start to get the community involved. In fact, it's so involved today that there's 26 programs that the community can participate in at no cost at all. I mentioned the Citizens Police Academy. Actually, there is a teens police academy, and there's women's self-defense, and there is a lot of things. He's also involved in the community from the standpoint of Special Olympics and Williams syndrome and coaching sports. So you can understand why I gave him the same type of respect that I would George Washington. Be sure to take lots of notes and join me in welcoming Constable Ted Heap.
And he did have me on the mat. Let me just tell you that. On this, what he's referring to is the Citizens Police Academy. There's a night we do scenario night, to where my wife and I take great pleasure, along with the many other volunteers who come up and I don't know what I move around. I don't know. That's So, do you need me to stand still?
Generally within 2 or 3 feet of there would be fantastic.
Good luck. But, I'll try.
I got your back.
I'll try. Thank you. Thank you. But on that particular night, what happens is that we go through different roles and scenarios and stuff, and we get to play the bad guys. And so yeah, it's a time that I get to stereotype a little bit and throw my bandana on and wear this and act like a drunk in a car or somebody who just assaulted my wife. So we get to role play, and after 40 years of marriage, role playing is an important part. So, but it's something we thoroughly enjoy doing, and it's kind of the highlight of the 10-week course or 11-week course for us. But thank you, Gail, and looking at your when you were talking about networking and you're talking about introducing each other and what is the first thing that we have to do. And what I noticed first off was determine what that common concern is or that problem. And I'm going to like to talk to you a little bit today. You're a Chamber of Commerce, people sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce. This is about your business, but it's also about your personal life, because those things are interconnected. How you serve the community through your business, but also how you end up being able to live your life within that community in which you serve. And what is so important here in Harris County is exactly that. I'm gonna declare the problem. Right now the problem is Harris County. And I'd like to take a few minutes and kind of talk to you a little bit about that. Now, it's the bio is I don't even remember when Gail got that bio, but we're hitting almost 40 years now of law enforcement. And in that 40 years, I have never seen this county like it is now. Never, never. I've never faced the challenges that we are facing now. People say, what is a constable? In a nutshell, many of you deal with your constables on a regular basis. Some of you don't have a clue what a constable does. I'm a constable, precinct 5, 1.3 million people, west side of town, primarily 350 some odd square miles. And we are elected officials every 4 years. I run with the presidency, so that is my cycle, as do all the constables in Harris County. But that being said, is that our responsibilities are civil process, but it's also serving warrants. It's also, in our department, it's everything from patrol to caring for and securing all of the parks within this precinct, 86 I think it is, different parks, senior community centers, the toll roads, anything from West, Sam Houston to West Park and all of that. That all files under the guidelines of the constable's office as far as that securing goes. Felony warrants, K9 units, bikes, drones, parks, I mean, it goes on and on, high water rescue and stuff. That's not what you're gonna find in other parts of Texas or other parts of the country.
Wow.
But it is what you have here in Harris County, and it works. It works because this county, the way it is designed, with the population that we have and the growth problems that we have, you cannot enforce, we are so short-handed, you can't enforce and keep people safe with one agency. We work collaboratively, the constables together, as well as with the Sheriff's Department and in the unincorporated Harris County, along with the Houston Police Department within the city limits. All of us are together. My precinct is very unique. I have about 50% of my precinct within the city limits. The other 50% is unincorporated Harris County. My officers who work with me in the city actually do city reports. That way we're all talking on the same page. In the county, we do Harris County reports. That way the communication is there. So it's people say, well, we have repetitiveness. No, we don't. You know, is there repetitiveness? Of course, I guess there is in everything. But the reality is that when a call comes in for service, the 911 dispatcher for the city and the county, same 911 dispatcher, actually geocodes this. You give the address and they're gonna geocode it and it's gonna spit out on the computer that goes to precinct 5. Or it goes to the Sheriff's Department. Or it goes to HPD. And when it spits that information out, we don't have wasted time of people sitting there on the phone, hey, is that you or is that your area? Or no, that's not within me, you're on the other side of the road. They actually do that for us and it sends it to the nearest unit, okay? So that's how we get the response time. The way that we stop crime is by visibility and response time. We have to have good response time and we have to be visible. That's what the criminals are looking for. Am I gonna get caught? And if I get seen and caught, do they have the type of response time to be able to apprehend me? So that's the first challenge. Harris County is shorthanded in law enforcement. I say Harris County, I must speak in generalities, meaning Harris County and the city of Houston together. The city of Houston HPD is gonna hit its, the lowest number it's had in manpower from what I heard, probably this month because of retirements and people that are resigning in 40 years.
Wow.
That's a backslide, folks.
Yeah.
That's a city that's growing and a county that's growing, but we have less men and women on the streets enforcing the laws. In Harris County, it's the same thing. The Sheriff's Department's at least a couple hundred people short. Your constables are all shorthanded. Why? Well, they don't get paid enough. Well, I would agree with that. But the fact is that it's not all about pay. A lot of it is the culture that we now have within our society that deal with law enforcement, that deal with some of the social issues. And it's very difficult to be able to get men and women who want to go into this occupation. It's an honorable occupation. It's something that is about service. It's about serving the community. If you're not in it for that reason, you're in it for the wrong reason, because it's not for the pay and it's not for the great days off and it's not for working all the holidays. It's because of the fact that you feel you can make a difference. But I think what is happening here is these 21 and 22-year-olds that we come and we're trying to get to go through the academy and we're swearing them in, they're looking at things a little bit different. They're seeing things from their living room couch and their reclining chair while they're playing their video games and stuff of, well, that's not what I see on TV. You know, why should I go through there and get paid $55,000 a year for having to put up with that baloney? And so we're starting to feel that. We're starting to feel that. That doesn't only affect me as a department head trying to fill these slots within my department, but it affects you as a business owner. You know, you don't want to own a business. You don't want to be part of a business in a crime-ridden county or city. It affects you who live in Harris County. There's a reason why people are moving up to Montgomery County. You know, people realize where it is. So this is it's a bigger picture, and it's a bigger problem, and that's why I say the problem is Harris County. You know, I'm one person. I have to be elected also. But this is the change is gonna have to take place at your level. The change is gonna have to take place because you said, I'm tired of my wife or my husband or my grandkids not being able to go down to the local store without being harassed. I'm tired of checking in and being nervous every 15 minutes when the grandkids go somewhere because I'm worried about them being accosted or sold drugs or whatever the case may be. You think it's a lot of flapdoodle where people are talking about, you know, recidivism and all of the things, but I'm telling you, it's the truth. It's the truth. During the funeral for one of our Corporal Galloway, who was killed, you know, during this past year or whatever, brutally murdered with about 16 rounds fired through his windshield that hit him, never got a chance to get out of his car. So as I'm up there talking at his funeral, I described it as a three-legged stool. A three-legged stool where 1.5 of the legs are gone. And you can't have that stool continue to sit like that. It won't stand, and it's falling, and that's what's happened. You have law enforcement, you have the district attorney's office, and you have the judicial system. Those are three legs of a stool, and if we're not all standing strong and in unison with each other, then it doesn't stand up. And that's what we have right now in Harris County. You need to make your change. You need to decide what is important for your quality of life, because that's what it comes down to. You know, I've been blessed by God, and the reality is that I know that there's gonna be people who are better than me coming after me. There's gonna be people to take my place. I won't be around here forever. And not that it takes me in the least bit, but I guess my point to that being is that, you know, we strive to make things better for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. That's what we're called to do, and that's what we do. So, and that's what each and every one of you do within your family. So, in Harris County, I'm gonna ask you to do one thing. Be involved. Be informed. Look and see who it is that's causing those legs of the stool to fall off or to be broken. Who is it that's doing that? And how is it happening? And do you or do you not agree with that? If you don't agree with it, then do something about it. Do something about it. Because complaining or being a victim is really not an option. We're all gonna be victims within our life. And we are in law enforcement now. Used to be a little bit different now. The community outreach, the gentlemen that you see here, Don and Chris and Curtis, these are men that work within our community outreach. They're proactive, but it's one of the few parts of law enforcement that is proactive. Everything else is reactive. That's not the way it used to be. We used to be very proactive in everything we did. But now, because of the manpower shortage, because of some of the challenges that we have of those other two legs of the stool, we end up being reactive. And that's not going to translate into a safe community and a safe environment for any of us. So look and see what it is that's happening in your community and what you do not agree with. Are we dealing with the problem of this bond reform to where we're dealing with the same criminals back out on the street? Absolutely. I don't care what you hear, I'm gonna tell you firsthand, absolutely. Our officers are out there, and if you don't think it ends up taking a toll on us, you're wrong, because it does. When they go out there every day and they're doing something and they run across the same, I've got other names for them, but the same bad guys, you know, and you arrest them and they're back out on the street the next day. Their bonds are set to the point of, and I'm okay for bond reform. I'm okay for misdemeanor bond reform on certain things, but recidivism needs to be taken into consideration. There is no place in law enforcement for politics. No place. But there is. There is. I was defunded $9.7 million last year. Okay? This year I was defunded $1.4 million. But we don't defund the police, remember. So just keep that in your mind. We don't defund the police. Well, I can tell you, I had $9.7 million less to run my department on March 8th than I did on March 1st. Call it whatever you want. Call it unfunded positions, call it whatever, I don't care what you want to call it. Call it what you want. It comes down to prioritizing. And I can sit there and look up on Commissioner's Court, and I have more years serving Harris County than all of them put together. But the truth is that they're gonna try to tell me how to run a police department. A Commissioner's Court's job is one thing, and that is to establish a budget and to assign that budget, okay? Commissioners are about potholes, they're about parks, and they're about transportation mobility, all right? It's really not about law enforcement. That's why the 1.3 million people get a choice to vote my butt right out of office. If I don't do a good job, throw me out. So what's happening now is that you have people within a Commissioner's Court, and this is, I'm talking local level in Harris County, but you have people within a Commissioner's Court that are deeming that they know what is best and it's all about prioritization. Well, be careful, do your research. When you hear that law enforcement's budget has been increased for the last 5 years, every year, that's misleading.
It's a lie.
Okay, however you want to call it, okay? Our budget may have gone up $400,000 in my department, but it's not because they've increased and put more men and women on the boots on the ground. That's not what's happened. What's happened is our COLAs, our cost of insurance, the retirement, the benefits have gone up, so they put a little more money, which they have to do across, so whether or not it's the guy who's filling the potholes or it's the cop on the street. That, as far as raising a budget, that's misleading. Because see, a politician can sit out there and say to you that we've increased law enforcement's budget every year. And what they're saying is that the gross amount of my budget increased, but every bit of it was not to put more men and women on the street. And you can go to every law enforcement, you can find that out, okay? So it's all a shell game the way this stuff is working. And so you take things like that, you take the fact that when we talk about, facing and fighting violent crime in Harris County, and we're spending $50 million, we're spending $20 million on it, and what? To fill sidewalk cracks, to put up new street lamps, and to knock down one crack house, okay? Well, that's not fighting violent crime. You can't take the cops off the street and say, if I put up a street light, I won't have anybody that's a violent criminal come down the street, all right? This is the type of shell games and politics that's being played, and there is no place for it in law enforcement, no place at all. In 40 years, I've never knocked on anybody's door and said, show me your voter registration card before I help you. Never. Okay? So why are they doing it for law enforcement agencies? Why are they doing it? There's a philosophical difference, obviously, with the bond reform, but when a misdemeanor bond reform ends up transferring itself and starts affecting a felony bond reform, and all of the other stuff that goes with it, then we start seeing our quality of life drop. And it has dropped, and it's been dropping for about 5 years now. And we're down to the point to where there needs to be a change, a drastic change. The problem is not between the constables and the sheriff's department and HPD and the district attorney. It's not. We work together out there, and whether or not it's you know, when Charles Galloway was murdered out here, you know, it was another agency who was the first one on the scene. When Deputy Goforth got murdered, we were the ones who secured the scene and ended up locating a suspect, the suspect. So, I mean, we work together. It makes no difference what uniform you have on. When we're out there, we're trying to accomplish the same goal, and we communicate that with each other. So we're working as a team. But we cannot fight these criminals with one hand. And that's what we're doing. We're fighting them with one hand. When I went to the academy, we used to have, things have changed now with all these level 3s and stuff, but we used to, our holsters used to be what were called widowmakers. And they're widowmakers because they were just a leather flap. I'm really aging myself, aren't I? They were a leather flap that hung over, and if you had to get into a fight with a suspect, then you fought with your hand against holding your flap down. Okay, so you're literally fighting with one hand. Okay, well, that's what it feels like now. Not a whole lot of officers go back that far and can remember that, but that's what it feels like. Because we're not only fighting the criminals, but we're fighting the politicians. We're fighting all of these people who really, you know, I don't know how to explain it. You know, we don't have to agree on everything, but there's certain things that don't need to be politicized. And that people need to be able, and if it's the only thing that politicians, and look, I know, I'm elected, okay? But I don't really, I know this is a cliche, I don't consider myself a politician. I don't do it very well, all right? It's just one of those things, you know? I'm a cop, I've worked every shift, I've been through every rank, I raised my family, you know, working extra jobs and everything. And so I understand that. I understand the life of these men and women who are out here on the road. But right now what we're doing is Harris County has to have a major reform. And that major reform has to happen soon. There's nothing more in my life, and I don't, you know, I don't care who's in office. What I care about is people who used to be able to try to accomplish a common goal, and that is not possible anymore. There's been a lot of times on Commissioner's Court, like I said, where it was a Democrat majority and a Republican majority. But when it was a Democrat majority and it was, you know, El Franco Lee and Jim Fontino and Squatty Lyons and, you know, and then you had your minority of your Republicans, everybody worked together. Everybody had the common good of this county as their first priority. Well, that's not the case anymore. I don't know how to describe it other than pure disdain and hatred out there right now. And I don't know how to fix that. It's not my concern to fix it right now. I've got the concern of 450 men and women out there on the streets that I have to worry about. But we have to fix that as business owners, as grandparents, as parents. We have to be able to fix what I believe is the decline, and not only the decline, but the unraveling of Harris County as a whole. I had somebody had a question earlier. I can't remember who it was. Okay, well, let me ask this. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
So, I live in Fort Bend County, so I don't know much about Harris County. But if you take the politics away from everything, every citizen has a concern with increasing taxes, right? So, in Fort Bend, we scream and shout when it goes up even by a penny, you know?
Sure.
Sure. So how do you factor that into what's going on in terms of trying to not overburden the citizens with more taxes? Is there a way we can all look at this from the same viewpoint and figure out exactly what areas are efficient in using this fund and what not?
Right. Well, I think everybody can be more efficient. I think the reality is that as technology increases, we need to, I wouldn't say we always need to say more technology, less manpower. That's not the solution. Sometimes you have to have boots on the ground. There's a program I'm going to say the day after, or 2 days after, because the heat came up when they took my $20 million from law enforcement as a whole. There was, a few of the people downtown decided to have I think it was Lena and Adrian Garcia and the sheriff had a press conference. And their press conference was, we're going to put $13 million into new technology, smarter law enforcement, okay? I'm on the Harris County Technology Committee. I'm a co-chair, which means that there's 3 of us that are, I haven't seen anything come through me in a year and a half that's been presented to court. So where's your $13.5 million? Where is it? Nothing has been done. Oh, we've got this great thing called Shot Spotter. Okay? I'm not saying it's bad in itself, but from what I hear, and please don't take this as gospel, but I think it's about $1 million per square mile or something, and it's all the technology of putting cameras and waves and all this type of stuff up on all the intersections, and when there's a shot, picks it up exactly down to the foot of where it's supposed to happen, and it sends it to California to be determined whether or not it was a blown transformer or a gun. And then somebody in California sends it back to our 911 dispatcher, who dispatches. Now all of this is supposed to take effect happen in a matter of a minute or so. Comes back to the 911 dispatcher. And I think that's great. I think we need shot spotters. I do. But see, to me, a shot spotter is putting more officers on the street and telling them to roll their damn window down. You know, roll your window down and listen. Because I've never had any technology like that tell me, you know, okay, so the gun was fired over there. You know, you don't know if it's the drunk out in the front yard who that's a common practice is to go out there and shoot in that neighborhood, or whether or not it's somebody being murdered. But now you've got an officer response to the scene, okay, well, what do I have? I don't know, in this square foot there was a shot fired. Okay, well, unless I have a victim laying on the ground, which is less than 1% of the time, what do I have, a case? I don't have a case. Nobody's telling me which way the suspect ran. Nobody told me what he's dressed like. Nobody's telling me any of that. So, you know, you're back to the thing of saying, okay, bam, there was a shot here, and now we have to, canvass the entire neighborhood and start taking statements and stuff because there was a shot fired up in the air? You know, there's nothing gonna take the place of community involvement. Mrs. Jones, who looks out the window and says, you know, it was a big white guy with a beard that ran down here, and he's wearing a plaid shirt, and he's doing this, that, and the other thing, and he's got 7 kids under his arm as hostages. You know, there's nothing that takes that place. We're not going to get that from $1 million a square mile, and that's where we have to be smart. So I'm going to say, to answer your question, we have to prioritize. My priority might be different than yours, okay? But we have to be smart in saying that if we have to decide where we're gonna spend this $1 million, we have to decide whether or not it's gonna be, I mean, if that's what it comes down to, just like your household budget and mine. Do I wanna go out to eat, you know, or do we wanna take our vacation at the end of the month? This is how much money I have, and it's either gonna go to gas or it's gonna go to food. What do I wanna spend it on? That's a decision that we have to have, leaders that we trusted and that we elected to make those decisions. And the only way we do that is by voicing your concern. Yes, sir.
So I'm going to violate, Gail, your first point up there earlier. I got to tell you just a second of what I do so you can understand the context of my question. So I lead.
You don't work for Shot Spotter, do you?
No.
Okay.
I'm only a manual shot spotter.
Okay.
No, I lead a nonprofit ministry, and we go into the darkest communities around Houston, and we minister to the needs of people. And while we're doing that, also helping them discover a life with Jesus. All right. So we walk the streets a lot. We're out, and one of the common complaints I hear from the locals is it doesn't do them. They don't feel like it does them much good to call for law enforcement to come into some of these places, because if law enforcement will come, a lot of times it's so lengthy of a period that the crime is already gone, the people are gone, you name it, and so they don't call law enforcement, right? Which kind of goes back to your point of rolling down the windows and officers being more active. I personally have walked the streets and on a regular basis and see prostitutes, pimps, johns all the time. I see officers going past all these crimes taking place and not even stopping or slowing down. And so how do you think about, when you talk about community, and I'm behind everything you're saying, how do we help, from your perspective, how do we help get that relationship between officers and residents at a better level? Because I'm an advocate for you guys and help and try to help explain that, but how do we deal with response times? How do we deal with when we see crimes taking place? And, because I've seen them, but you can't get law enforcement to come in and be a part of the solving the issue in a timely basis.
Sure. It's a complicated question, but
It
you have to be able to build those bridges, and whether or not those bridges are beginning with, you talk about, we have an active effort right now, and I think it might be the way it needs to go, is through within a lot of these communities, it is through their churches. It's through the people. Who do they respect? Who do people respect? Usually the leaders are not the politicians. The leaders are going to be somebody in their family, or it's going to be their pastor at church. Somebody like that is who they go to with the problems and their concerns. So 2 things. Response time, you're absolutely right. The only way we're going to knock down response time is by getting more officers. Crime rate has gone through the ceiling. Right now, the city of Houston, call and tell them that you had your lawnmower stolen out of your garage. Okay? Or that you had your $2,000 bikes that you bought for all your grandkids and you had to stop and save your Social Security money up to do that, but it was so important for you. What you're gonna do, you don't ever get an officer. You're gonna say, they'll say, call and get a case number, let your insurance handle it. They don't even make minor accidents anymore. Get it off this side of the road, let your insurance handle it. Okay? Why? Not because they don't want to work, it's because we're shorthanded. $2.6 million went to Safer Harris County, a project, because we don't want to hire more officers. What we said was we're going to put overtime for them, allow them to make their overtime, okay? That way we're putting more boots on the ground, okay? About 22% of the spots and the money was filled. That's it. You can't get the officers to work the overtime. You know, there's not enough officers to work the overtime. The money's sitting there. You don't need that. We don't need to work 80 hours a week. What we need to do is have more officers working 40 hours a week, because God forbid, we have lives too. You know, and so, but with that comes a commitment to say we have to employ more, we have to commit to more, and I understand all of that. I'm not the one I have to run my budget. You know, I've got to run, $50 million worth of what I'm responsible for. So I don't want to be the people down there that are sitting in commissioner's court. But maybe if what they tried to do is not micromanage everybody and decide where that budget's going to go, then back up and let us be responsible for running it. I've had a surplus in my budget every year that I've had to maintain a budget. Every year. At home, I have an old Big Chief tablet I keep, and believe me, there's not one thing that goes unpaid at my house. So I don't really need them to tell me how to manage my budget. What I need them to do is quit trying to micromanage the way I operate my department. So building the bridges with the clergy, the faith community, and mainly the people. We build the bridges with the people through things like our Citizens Police Academy, our Silver Watch. What is that? These are programs that are all free. These are a program where seniors, people, whether or not your mother or your father or whatever, your neighbor, you can register that person with us. And that Silver Watch, now we have a database. Oh my gosh, now they're going to watch me. We're not watching you. What it does is it gives our officers, as they're patrolling that neighborhood, the ability to stop by and say, Mrs. Jones, how are you? I'm fine. Well, listen, I just want to be sure. Well, you know what, officer, I have a question to ask you. I got a phone call yesterday from somebody that said, my bank account was going bad, and if I just gave them this and that and everything, Mrs. Jones, that's a scam. Don't do that or whatever. Well, thank you, And next thing you know, they're having coffee, and we're trying to tell the deputy, get back on the road. But Mrs. Jones has somebody she trusts now, okay? And that's the way we do it. You know, we have to be able to develop those. So we have to integrate these community outreach programs in doing that. So faster response time, absolutely. You know, the old days of strong arming witnesses and trying to get people don't need to be scared of the police anymore. I mean, there may have been a time where that was a concern in certain areas, but that's not the case. It really isn't. Is there areas where law enforcement doesn't go to? I don't know of any areas. I do know of areas to where the policy of the department is we don't send in less than 4 people.
Wow.
And you may always say you don't go there because we don't have 4 people on that side of town. You know, but that's because the crime rate is so high in there. And people that live in there, I don't care if you live in a $50,000 house or a $5 million house. Damn it, it's still your house. And you deserve to be able to live in that house in peace and not be worried about whether or not you're gonna have a bullet flying through the front window or whether or not your grandchildren are gonna get accosted and murdered in the front yard. You shouldn't have to. And that's, you know, so we do have to address this holistically. But the way, in my opinion, to address that isn't necessarily saying that, you know, people have to be accountable for their actions. And when there is no accountability for what you do, then it's very hard to change. The people that we see in some of these underserved areas, believe me, they're the people that are demanding the most because, you know, they're not scared of the cops.
Right.
You know, they want the thug that's been walking up and down the sidewalk and peddling the crack in front of their house gone. You know, they want them gone. Those are some of the bravest people I've ever seen in my life. I mean, they're willing to come out on that front porch and say, get this trash out of here. You know, I've lived here since I was, 16 years old. Get this trash out of here. But we need to be able to have the tools to get this trash out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, first a statement, all of us can figure this out on the client next door neighbor app. And, I know, unfortunately, we all have people have had different experiences. It's like people have a negative experience with a police officer, and from that point on, all cops are bad. It's kind of like saying, this dog bit me, all dogs are bad.
Correct.
It's,
Correct.
narrow-minded. So, but we all are aware of what you're saying. My question, and it goes to him, financially, I think finances, everything's always about the money. Where can he and any of us see the budget that was approved, and not just the budget, but see the breakdown? Like when you have a budget, you have an amount, and I worked in the federal government, so I think that. It's like you see the amount and you should see kinda like where this is going, and then is that audited? So those are 3 things. Is there like a budget that people can see? And is there audited, any kind of audits that you can validate that those numbers? Cause I know numbers can disappear. The other thing is, no, I guess that was it.
Well, I don't know about Fort Bend County. I would imagine so. Harris County has it's all public information. It's all posted. I can't tell you the website to go to it. I don't post it. But Harris County's we get audited. I want to say it's every quarter. I mean, I get a report on it. Certain things we get an audit on. Our property rooms but as far as the finances go.
The budget that goes for the police.
The budget. You should be able to look at it, but just be sure you understand that when you look at it and you say, okay, by golly, this department has 50 million, this department has 100 million, understand what that monies are being used for. I mean, your district attorney's office has everything from investigators to prosecutors and 12 different levels of crimes and stuff like this. So there's a lot of people that are involved in that. But yes, the auditing reports of that is all public information. Harris County Auditor, matter of fact, last week I asked him, I said, I want you to go through all of my previous, my last year's finances of mine and tell me how much money I had left here. And they audited to the penny, everything that goes out. We can't go out and just randomly buy stuff. Harris County used to be where at the end of the year, everybody had to spend their money, so we would, last two months of the year, everybody was getting new furniture. Well, is that really a good steward of taxpayers' money? Then we went into
the security, the private, do they have private security in the commissioners or the
private
people?
security.
Harris County, do they have any private detail? Does anybody there have private detail?
For their own
Security
personal
detail.
security, the county judge does.
Only the county judge.
It
So,
just passed.
to my understanding, yes, it used to be, constables, and it went to a private agency, and it's soon to be, if it's not already, the Harris County Fire Marshal's office. So, Judge Hidalgo, feels necessary to have her own security. I think she's the first county judge that's ever had a security detail. So,
One more question.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's two.
I'm gonna stick around to answer them all. Yes, ma'am.
What is the overall morale of the 450 officers that are working?
Whew. You know, they shelter me from stuff. Oh, everything is great, you know. Maybe you ought to ask these guys back here. You know, I think overall, law enforcement is tough we know that 98% of the people out there support us. We had a program we started called Operation Appreciation, to where people would say, what can we do for y'all? Don't bring any more food, we're all better now. Don't bring any more food, because that's all we do is sit around and eat, okay? I mean, I'll walk in the back door and they'll be, and you're going, where did all this come from? I said, get with your churches, your organizations, your families, and write a letter or do a 20-second video. Send it to us. And what we do is each morning, Don would go through there, look and find it, and post it on their, every officer when they get in has a laptop computer in their car, their MDT, their mobile data terminal, then they go on, they sign on. And the first thing that's gonna pop up, regardless of what shift, is gonna be a letter from a resident, and not Mr. or Constable Heap or Deputy Jones, but something of, look, we just wanted to tell you how much this and that and everything, or a little 30-second video of some little child or mom, dad who's saying, we really appreciate everything you're doing. And it was, you know, we had this stuff stockpiled to where he had all these things to choose from. He'd have to go through and choose which one he wanted to post it today. But that type of stuff brings morale to the officers, because they understand, we know that we have your support. It's the 2 and 3 and 5% are the loudest that get the loudest and get the coverage for being the loudest. So we know that we have the support so to answer your question, Barry, how's the morale of the troops out there? Go ahead, I'm okay.
No, I think the constable said it best. Overall, we know that the community supports us. We get people all the time, we'll walk into a restaurant and we'll be going up there, and then all of a sudden, it's okay, it's already been taken care of, you know, or whatever. I mean, those things that happen all the time. You know, people come up and says, thank you for your service. You know, thank you for being out here. Thank you for what you do. We get that a lot, and we know that, and we feel the support. We know that you guys pray for us. I have people telling us that we're praying for you. And I tell you, thank you very much, because that sustains us. The times that it gets down, of course, is when, you know, something controversial happens and everything, and then you see a lot of media coverage. Sometimes that brings, you know, things down a little bit. But, you know, overall, Constable hit it on the head. We feel supported, and the morale's good.
Good.
We wish we would have more help. That is one thing we wish. We wish we had more help, for sure.
Absolutely. Gail, are you running me off?
Yes, sir.
Gail, we were at the other corner bakery because on the internet it showed that address, and we got there a little bit after 9:30.
You can't believe the internet.
But thank you very much. I'm gonna stick around here. So the questions that we didn't get to answer and stuff, I would love to be able to dialogue with you about them, okay?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So Constable Heap said, get involved, and in just a minute we're going to show you how to do that. But first, I want to introduce to you Randall Laughlin. Now, rather than a physician or being involved with the medical community, he's a researcher, and he researches cause and effect rather than symptoms. Now, he's a retired Navy captain, 31 years, 61 countries. He's had over 5,000 men and women under his command. He's been married for 53 years, He's got 2 children and 3 grandchildren. He has 5 academic degrees, and he's got 7 certifications. He's a distinguished postmaster. He is a book publisher. He happens to have written 5 books. Some of them are bestsellers, like The Joy of Ageless Health. And he shares a few minutes at each one of our sessions to kind of update you on health issues. I put USA Global TV host, I've got a slide on that in a minute. So help me welcome Ray O'Loughlin.
Thank you very much.
So on the first.
My latest bestseller is Joy of Ageless Health. Jeb, would you give me a number between 1 and 22?
15.
15 is going to get a book.
7.
And 7. So whoever's on this list at those 2 numbers, I will give you an autographed copy of the book when we get there.
But we came in late.
Did you sign the piece of paper?
I didn't, is that what?
Beverly
you want to
Roberts
sign?
and
Yeah. Is it? Oh, okay.
Rena, can't get the last name.
Who are the
Those
two,
are the
who are the 2 people?
Is that what was passed around?
Beverly Roberts.
Rena Brahms and Beverly Roberts.
Okay, those 2 people.
Can I change my number?
Or your name,
You
one of
can
the 2.
change it all you want. My first love was chemistry, long before I met my wife, which will be 54 years in less than a month. And I use it for researching the human body at the cellular level. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, you fix a problem. Treat a symptom, and you'll always treat it. Same thing with law enforcement. If you fix the cause, then the problem goes away. But if all we're doing is band-aiding things, those band-aids come off. Eye health is the one I chose today because recently I've had a couple problems, and I found out that number 1, I'm borderline glaucoma. I mean, that's on the next slide, so let's do that. If you do just a regular Google search right now, and they're going to tell you typical things, get regular eye exams. Well, I had 31 eye exams in a row as part of my Navy aviation physicals way back when. Well, when I retired in '99, I kept getting my annual physicals. I haven't missed one since '68. But my audio, my eyes, and the level of detail they do in cardiology, those have halted until recently. Now, would some of the problems I have today have been corrected? It's not the mere fact that you get them corrected. As this event today, this is about awareness. It's about education. We're trying to give that information out. Had I known something earlier, I might have been able to make some changes. You can, in fact, prevent a lot of things. We're going to go into a little bit of that just toward the end of this. But they're going to tell you, get regular exams, know what your family history is. Yes, I have a mother and a grandmother that both had glaucoma. I am just starting now right on the borderline. But it's one of those things I go in for a test. You're fine today. Going up, 6 months later, you're right at the maximum. You come back later, and it's back to normal. So it's fluctuating right in there. But I do have options that I can do. The nutrition, everything in life is going to be starting at the cellular level in the body. All disease starts literally at chronic, low-level cellular inflammation. That is your free radical damage. That's toxins. That's a lot of different things going on. You have DNA damage. You have cells that aren't functioning properly. When those things start to grow, now you start to have a problem because you can control the low-level inflammation very easily. That's your diet. You can control a lot of that. But if you don't control it, the next stage up is called oxidative stress. And that's when we start having problems with our eyes, ears, brains, heart, a lot of things, because that oxidative stress is not being controlled. Now, how do you control inflammation at the cellular level? Primarily your fruits and vegetables, not your meat and potatoes. But one good thing today is I'm going to tell you about red meat. It will help your eyes. Now we'll talk about that at 3. So there is some hope there. And there's other lifestyle factors, and that's your smoking, alcohol. Smoking probably one of the worst things you can do for your heart, your brain, for almost everything, especially your eyes. Alcohol, depending on which research you want to believe, some say a glass a day is fine. Others saying you really don't even need a glass a day. So I think I would tend to err on, well, half a glass is probably fine. Aging, it happens to all of us. Every single one of us are gonna have a problem at some point in time. Now, you can in fact eliminate that. If I were to ask you the question, what causes you to age? I said, give me two things, the cause of aging.
Stress.
That's a factor, that's not a cause.
Time.
No, well, time is something that accumulates, but it's not the cause of the actual disease of aging in your body.
Commissioner's Court.
That's a factor for some people. But for those people who can't spell Commissioner's Court, it doesn't affect their aging at all.
Human growth hormone.
Actually, you're right. As we get older, we lose the ability to create human growth hormone. However, there's a really simple way to exponentially increase it on a daily basis. One of them is by intense exercise, something that we don't really want to do. But that is one way to do it, and it pops it back up. But fasting, you fast 18 hours a day, intermittent fasting, and you're going to ramp that human growth hormone right back up to probably back when you're in your 40s. I do a 72-hour fast every month. Usually ends up being about 100, 120 hours. But a 72-hour fast rebuilds your immune system from scratch. But it also, in 24 hours, it will have about 2,000% increase in your human growth hormone. So fasting in and of itself is a very, very healthy way to avoid a lot of age-related diseases. So the other one is the length of your telomere. At the very end of your DNA, there's this little thing like your shoelace at the very end, that plastic cap, the caplet, that holds that DNA together. Every time that cell replicates and becomes two, you lose a little bit of the thing at the very end. It's called a telomere. And at some point in time, you lose so much that the next time the cell doubles up, that's it, it's gone. And there are things that you can do to reduce that loss. You're not really growing it, but you're actually losing a little bit more each time. And a lot of that has to do with your nutrition, more so than anything else, your balanced diet. But those are things that you can do. Now, I started out in college as a chemistry major. On my third explosion, seriously, 3 of them, I ended up in the hospital for several days. I had nitric acid burns in both eyes pretty badly. If I was wearing a short sleeve shirt, I could show you some scars. But that changed my level of curiosity significantly. Yes, it was my fault. But I still had, after I recuperated from that, I had good enough eyesight to qualify to get into the Naval Academy. However, I was the number 2 person, an alternate, not the primary, so I didn't get there. But we do have some people in who have gone to the Naval Academy. And congratulations for that too, it's quite an accomplishment. But the thing with the eyes, as a chemistry major, I had my second explosion and they said, why didn't you use the safety shower? Well, you look at that thing, it looks like it's been corroded for about 30 years. And so one day I'm leaving, it's late in the afternoon, nobody's around, and I just pull on a rope. And actually water came out, I was surprised. And then literally a couple, 3 months later, I'm grabbing somebody else and I'm running them down the hallway and I'm pulling that thing and literally just trying to clean my eyes out of nitric acid. And I was very fortunate to get there and know exactly where it was and react quick enough. So that was my first experience with eye issues. But we all have eye issues. Several of us in here wear glasses. I'm sure a couple in here wearing contact lenses. There may be even a couple people in here who probably have good enough eyesight that they could go right down to the local driver's license bureau and pass the test with no problems whatsoever. Just look at them and just read it. But that's not all of us, because every year we get older, we're going to lose a little bit. You may become a little farsighted, a little nearsighted. Maybe astigmatism starts to pop up. These aren't your typical eye problems that we see. Maybe occasionally you might get an issue with conjunctivitis. You get an infection in the pink eye. Very common. A lot of things we can prevent, some things we can't. You know, just kids end up with stuff all over themselves. We can't prevent everything, but we can take care of our health of our eyes by doing the right things. And I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. As I got into the military, I had my eyes tested every year. Well, just recently I'm finding out that my 20/10 in my left eye is down to 20/15. It's still better than 20/20. I can see very, very well. And ironically, the people who were aces during World War II were routinely seeing in both eyes 20/10, which is one of the reasons they were aces, because they could see twice as far as anyone else clearly.
Really?
But when you look at some of the autobiographies of the people, one of the things they attribute to the fact that they could see airplanes that other people couldn't see. And that was a major advantage for them. My right eye used to be 20/20, now it's 20/30, so I'm getting older. I'm 70, I'll be 76 in September. And so it's one of those things that we will see changes. Astigmatism, you know, if I squint, yeah, I can get rid of it, but it's there. But these are things that are normal. There are other things that aren't normal. Glaucoma, cataracts, macular degeneration, these are other diseases that happen. But they happen mainly because of that low-level chronic cellular inflammation. You end up with that inflammation that becomes oxidative stress. It gets into the proteins and pigments of the eyes, and you start having a lot of problems. You heard about in the brain when the proteins plaque over, the beta amyloid plaque. These are misshaped, misfolded proteins. Well, the same thing happens inside the lens. And it's very difficult to get a nutrient into the lens, actually stop some of that misshapen protein that's in there. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about, I think that's it, okay. One of the things that we can do is to fight that inflammation, obviously with your fruits and vegetables. And why fruits and vegetables? Because they provide the antioxidants that fight the free radical damages. When you get into some of the other things, you're not getting very much from your carbohydrates, your fats, your proteins. But the fats that we do need, the essential fatty acids, your omega-3 and omega-6, those are the ones our bodies can't make. We have to actually get them from the foods we eat. But the omega-6 we get from everything in the world. And when you get too much of it, now it becomes an inflammatory agent rather than something we have to live a normal life. Now, when you get that omega-6 outside a certain range, so if I have a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-3 to omega-6, perfect. You can't ask for anything better than that. But if you get beyond 4-to-1, now you have a problem because the omega-6 has become inflammatory. And that inflammatory situation now starts to create an issue with that inflammation, which becomes oxidative stress. So you can create a workaround for that by adjusting the diet that you have. Now exercise, yeah, you're getting more oxygen to flow, but over time our plaque in our hearts, our arteries, a lot of things, they also diminish some of the capacity of blood flowing through the eye. So a little bit more exercise gets that blood flowing, you get more oxygen going through there. So it's not one of those things you want to ignore. And it doesn't have to be going out and doing high intensity exercise. Just a mere fact that you're walking back and forth a half a mile down the road and come back again. You need something outside. We talked the last 2 sessions here with the Houston West Chamber of Commerce about sunlight and how that affects our health, both from the ultraviolet and from an infrared perspective. I'll catch you at the end.
The last week I started walking a mile across the street, and I reduced my meds 5 pills.
Okay.
Reduced what?
It reduces height by 5 inches.
Oh.
I don't know what I had.
But the things that we can do, and I mentioned earlier red meat, there's a particular amino acid called carnosine, C-A-R-N-I-S-I-N-E. Carnosine is one of those unique ones that actually can get into the lens itself. It comes from red meat, but they actually have eye drops. It's 1% N-acetyl carnosine. And if you're having some issues with your eyes, you might want to talk to your doctor about, can you get that? Order it online. It's not a big deal, but as I tell almost everybody, I'm not a doctor. I don't prescribe anything. If you're already on any medicine, it doesn't make any difference what it is. Talk to your doctor first before you actually start changing anything. Because you don't know, and if you can't get to your doctor, talk to your pharmacist. Say, he probably even knows better what's going on with regard to, well, this one interfere with that one. I don't go to the pharmacist very often, but when I do, one of the things I love to ask the question is, can I drink and drive with this? And they'll go back, give me a minute, and they come back, yeah, it's okay. 9 times out of 10, I get, yeah, it's okay to drink and drive. They don't understand what they're saying. But rarely do I get somebody say, no, you. The answer is yes, you can, but you shouldn't. But again, people, they don't hear what you're asking a lot of times. And so they're thinking, okay, can you drive with this? They're not looking at the drinking part of it. And that's where they come back and say yes. There's eye exercises. This is kind of an interesting thing. Bates guy back in the early 1900s came up with the Bates method. And he literally put out a lot of eye clinics, just put them out of work. because he used eye exercises to get people out of their glasses to correct nearsightedness, farsightedness, and it was very, very successful. Well, the local doctors association shut him down, and there's a big stigma saying, well, you can't do that as a self-help message. It's really strange. Enough people in here probably remember the commercials on TV, the See Clearly method. A lot of that was some of the Bates method. But they're saying, no, don't do self-exercise, that's dangerous. But if you want to do it under doctor's supervision, it's fine. I don't understand why in one case it's fine, in another. If I want to do figure eights with my eyes, or if I want to follow a pattern, that shouldn't have any effect on my eyesight whatsoever. But again, if all we're doing is looking at a computer screen or driving down the road, we're not exercising our eyes at all. If you have one dominant eye, the undominant eye is not being exercised at all. So if you're sitting there watching TV, why not just put something up in front of you, your bad eye or your good eye, and just look around during the commercial. You don't have to pay attention to the commercial, it's there, but look around, focus on something. Get a little bit of exercise while you're sitting there. You're not doing anything else. Why not take advantage of that? But carnosine is the one thing I'm going to leave you with, because that is, in fact, you have the B vitamins, all the rest of that stuff. They're there. I strongly recommend a magazine called Life Extension. It's online for free. I happen to get a copy now for about 15 years, but it has probably some of the best information out there. You have an article in there like on eye health, there may be 100 references to show you where all each of that stuff came from. The blog I wrote yesterday is on eye health. I cover a little bit in there. I have about almost 1,000 original content articles on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to connect with me there, more than happy to. My website's redlaughlin.com. I'm open for questions now.
Okay. Red, do you see any correlation real quick with eye problems with the younger kids, especially with these video games and the computers and the phones and all the stuff?
I can't answer that question because I haven't researched it. My gut feeling is yes, because they're not using their eyes like we used to do. We were outside doing everything in the world we could possibly get in trouble for. But nowadays, your focus is here, and yes, your eyes are going, but they're not getting that distance that you can. That's my gut feel. Can there be other issues? Yes, because on a lot of screens you have a blue light problem. I have a large screen that I use for my writing. I can't sit there without having blue filter lenses on my eyes. I cannot. I mean, 5 minutes I have a headache. It's that bright. My other computers I can do fine. But if I'm sitting there with blue light coming off of my handheld laptop, my handheld tablet, or my phone, I have to have a feeling that over time, Constable, that's probably going to become an issue, but it's not something I've researched.
Okay, thank you.
But blue light is a major problem.
Yes, you mentioned fasting. I began intermittent fasting probably 2 or 3 years ago, and it was really life-changing. But can you speak a little bit to protocols around that? I know a lot of folks don't even know what intermittent fasting is. You say 18 hours, and they don't realize how simple that can be. But then secondarily, I've also heard that you should cycle that on and off. In other words, don't do that 7 days a week, but maybe do it 3 or 5. Have a few days normal to kind of get your body, mixed up a little bit. But what are your thoughts on that?
Intermittent fasting is anything literally beyond 12 hours a day of not eating anything. Fasting means water, nothing that adds calories to the body, that you get a metabolic response from the body. Now, some people can argue that 1 gram of carbohydrate from a lime squeezed into a glass of water is not going to cause a metabolic response, and they're probably correct, especially if you sip it over a half hour. But really, I drink unsweet tea, that's it, and water. That's all I have when I'm on a fast. At the beginning of Lent, I did 8.5 days of fasting. I think you did 11, not that many days. About a year ago, you did 11 days in a row of fasting.
Wow.
At the end of Lent, I think I did 5.5. But I typically will do 4 or 5 days a month. Now, intermittent fasting, if you go to bed, say at 10 o'clock at night, and you're not eating before 10 o'clock in the morning, that's 12 hours right there. Most of the time when we eat in the morning, it's because of habit, or because of dehydration, not because we're hungry. We have that feeling, it feels like hunger, but our mind is telling us that we're hungry. But it's really and truly, we're dehydrated. And if you just drink something in the morning to take up that void, that hunger will probably go away. Now you get to noontime, early afternoon, now you got 12, 14, 15 hours. 15 hours is a good start on intermittent fasting. It does reduce the risk of a lot of diseases, because you're not allowing, let's say you're eating 6 meals a day, well, small ones. What's happening? Your blood sugar is constantly up in the air. It never has a chance to come back down. Your liver is working full time. It never has a chance to relax and fully take care of everything. If you're not reading labels and avoiding toxins, your liver is going to be working 24/7 because you don't have a chance to allow it to do its job. But you take off 18, 20 hours, everything can calm down. When you go to sleep at night, you're no longer doing digestive things that you should be doing. You can actually go to sleep. Sleep is probably one of the, if I had to pick one thing that's going to be really and truly helpful for you, get a good quality sleep every night, because that's when your body repairs itself. So if you're eating and exercising and doing everything you need to do, you mentioned stress a minute ago. Stress management, if you're not doing it several times a day, there's something wrong. How do you do stress management? Well, the easiest one, it's a smile. Somebody mentioned Commissioner's Court. You can't have a negative and a positive thought in your brain at the same time. When you have a negative thought, your body language tells you immediately.
Yes.
You can force that muscle all the way back up into the brain. You can't keep that negative thought there. So if I'm going to laugh out loud, you can. It doesn't have to be a real laugh. It can be a false laugh. You're still getting the benefit of stress relief. But if you're sitting there between, you know that light is going to turn red before you get there, accept it. That's part of life. Smile. You're not going to take that stress with you on when you make the on-ramp to the freeway. You may be running late. Well, that's your fault. That's something to be corrected with other issues, not lifestyle issues. But that's another issue you could correct. But smile. That eliminates a lot of things. If you can exercise, that's a good way of doing it. There are a lot of other ways. EFT, emotional freedom techniques, is something I recommend. Go onto YouTube, EFT, and whatever problem you have, weight loss, stress, sleep, EFT is a very, very good way of doing it. I had one other question, one more after this one, and we'll give away the books.
I have hypoglycemia, so I find if I go more than 12 hours without eating, I literally just sort of space out.
There
I
are some
can't
conditions
function.
like hypoglycemia that you do have to take control of yourself. But then the question is, what foods do you choose to eat? You know, some have a better glycemic response than others. If you're going to have a donut,
No.
versus
No donuts.
kale salad, there's different things that you have, and that's one of those things you got to find out what causes that thing to spike as high as it goes, and if you can kind of moderate it a little bit. But yeah, hypoglycemia is a problem that you've earned because of other things, and
It's genetic.
but genes are only about 5% effective. You can turn genes off and on. Whether it's breast cancer, Alzheimer's, there's very few genes that cannot be addressed by lifestyle factors. So you can actually turn a gene off or on. It's called epigenetics. So there are things you can do to change a genetic predisposition. One more question.
Let's get ready, big hand. I've been watching the other occupants of Corner Bakery Cafe as they walk past the window, and I see them looking at all the uniforms. Wondering what's going on here. So, I wanted to let you know, and again, this will be in the recording, that you can check out Red on TV, USA Global TV. How many of you are getting the Connections Now newsletter? A few of you, okay, good. That comes out every Monday, and it's got a tremendous amount of information on there. Several times, Constable Ted Heap has been the speaker for Conservative Leaders Forum. We've been doing this for a number of years, and we have a session every month. And this time, I told you we would share something with you that would allow you to implement what Constable Heap is recommending, and that's get involved. Bill Eli, who was the chairman of the Harris County Republican Party Training and Development Committee, is going to do a training on how to organize your community, build relationships, recruit voters, support candidates, training volunteers, and much, much more. And one of the areas that we covered in our last session was on the special districts. And most of you know what a MUD is. How many know what an ESD is? A few of you know that already. Okay, and the EMS and so forth. Anyway, Steve Van Dyke, who is a expert in the area of these special districts, will be speaking right after Bill Eli. And if you wanted to meet him in person, raise your hand there, if you would, Simon.
It's Simon, not Steve.
Simon.
He knew the name, just wrote the wrong one.
Anyway, Simon, thank you. Okay. Oh.
Hey, Gail, your slide's not up to date. You need to add 3 conservative members of the ESD board as well, that Bill was helpful in getting.
Oh, yes, okay, thank you. So, another great session. It is the, Red talked a little bit about seniors. The AARP magazine says if you're 50 years old, you're now in a senior, but 34% of the population are seniors. But anyway, a good session for you to attend. This is a good networking event, by the way. The host of that is here today. Raise your hand there, Newell Cheatham. Down at Texas borders. One of the great Houston West Chamber sessions, now called WOW, went on Wednesday, great networking session. CBFA is a good one. The Katy Christian Chamber is hosting Johnny Teague, who is the conservative candidate for CD7 every Wednesday. In fact, I was there this morning, and that's Katy Business Connections. And this event, a month from today, will have the CEO of the Greater Houston YMCAs, and they've done a redo, a remake, a complete revolution on how they operate, and you'll be happy to come and talk to Steve Eyes on that one. The Toolbox Ministries, the executive director was here a little bit earlier, and they have a great program. Boomer Connection has to do with a TV program for seniors by seniors. Randall Laughlin was featured on there, and well, he's left already, but Hyde Ives is a facilitator for that. Oh, you get a free gift from me today. It's called Gut Matters. And the great founding doctor at Botry said it all starts in your gut. Actually, my name's on the book, but most of the work was done by a physician friend of mine that is an expert in nutrition and digestion. So I'll leave you with this. Stop worrying about what people who aren't thinking about you think about you. This is from Ronald Earl Wilshire. He's the author of Miscellaneous Ramblings of a Slightly Deranged Mind. So, thank you very much, Fred. If you would push the button on there, we'll look forward to seeing you at the next session.